Rabbinic law sometimes match the secular law, sometimes not. Today we're going to deal with a lot of practical rabbinic law. In the state of Israel, when people go to the Bet Din, the rabbinic court, they basically sign or admitted that the ruling is the same as a secular ruling. So here is an example. Today I'm going to use a lot of practical, real example. A fellow had a simcha, let's say a wedding, bar mitzvah, and invited guests. And it was a caterer business that provided the food. And he noticed that the main dish, people did not eat. So by the end of the simcha, the person paid him in full whatever the caterer wants. A week later, he gets invitation to rabbinic court. And the guy wants, at the beginning he wanted the whole money back. And when he asked him why he didn't comment, he said, I didn't want to embarrass you doing my simcha and I didn't want to ruin your business. But I noticed that none of my guests touched the main dish. Now the question is, since the other part of the simcha, people ate, meaning the other dish and the other things involved with the expense, obviously that part he needs to pay. The question is if he's involved with money back, discount, and how. Big part of discussion today is also the question of compensation. Compensation meaning when you do something, it's called in Talmudic terminology, mavriach ari. Mavriach ari, you see a lion, or nowadays you see a dangerous snake, or you see something is involved with fire, and you take care of that. Can you ask for the expense from others? Example, I saw it in the Yarchon meaning a monthly bulletin in Monsey, New York. A fellow lived in a high-rise residential building. Fire took place, and the fire was the roof, floor, etc. So he basically took care of that. The question is, can he impose payment over his expenses to other people in that building, since if he left it the way it is, the whole building will be a big fire. Another part of that discussion is neighbors. He noticed while the other neighbor is away, out of state, that the neighbor's balcony is really in a horrible shape, dangerous. People walk under that balcony, can be wounded. So he called contractors, and the contractors want $6,000, $5,000. He get a guy that does a great job for $4,000. Fix his neighbor balcony while the neighbor is away. He fixed it beautifully. The neighbor came back, was very impressed with the work, was very thankful, was very happy. How much is it? The guy said $4,000. He says, the truth is, I have other estimates for $6,000 and $5,000. He says, I want $4,000. He says, excuse me, I heard that you pay $1,000 to this contractor. He says, yes, it's my buddy, it's my friend. I pay him $1,000. It's none of your business. The work that he provided for you worth $4,000. So the question is, can you impose upon the other guy the other $3,000 or not? Base of the idea that if it's a life in dangers, so he cannot ask for more. But if it's called yored lesde חברו, if the person go to his neighbor in order to ameliorate his condition, the question is that a reason to impose on him the difference in payment? Another case happened to the Bet Din of Edah Haredit. It's a Bet Din in Yerushalayim. It was the yeshiva boys that rent a apartment, and the apartment was in very bad shape, but the guy gave them a good price. So it was a broken window, it was the door that didn't close properly, and sure enough, thieves came in and stole things from the yeshiva boys. So they refused to pay rent. So he took them to the Bet Din, the landlord. So they said, look, it's not befitting for normal living. He said, on the other hand, look, if something wasn't right, before you get in, you should fix it, or you should fix it. The fact that you live there you have to pay rent. You agree upon the renting the place. So the question is the landlord is right or is the tenant is right? Can they impose the damage of the property upon him or not? So what you see, my dear friends, that there is a lot of monetary disputation going to discuss today. For example, someone ran to someone else's car and he damaged the lights, the back lights, or the door. So the guy said, all right, your car is 20 years old. If you sell your car in the market, it's worth $500. So what's the difference if you have this door fixed or not this door fixed? He says $20. I give you $20. The guy said, no, it is true that I can get to my car from the side door, but you ruined my front door. The fact that this car worth nothing is none of your business. In order for me to walk in my car, I need to fix that door, which costs $2,000. The guy said, you're crazy. The whole value of this car is $500. Can he impose upon him this damage or not, right? So we are today going to discuss in Tractate Bava Kamma, page 58. We start on 57b, 9 lines from the bottom of the page. נפלה לגינה ונהנית, משלמת מה שנהנית. Imagine a situation, you have an animal that somehow by accident fell to someone else's yard, to someone else's garden. Now, after the animal fell, guess what? The animal ate, but for our discussion, expensive food, expensive produce. So the question is, what the owner needs to pay? The owner needs to pay whatever the food that average person feeds the animal for a meal. For example, if it was in the afternoon or evening, it was dinner, it was supper, whatever it is, whatever the person feed the animal at that time, that's what need to pay. It doesn't need to pay the expensive food that the animal ate at his neighbor. Follow me? Okay. Amar Rav benech beta. Rav said, you know what happened to that animal? That animal fell from high to low, just somehow, and is struck by the produce. So while the animal usually watch what they are doing, but somehow it happens. So in one hand, it saved the animal's life because the animal jumped on that produce, but on the other hand, it ruins the produce. Okay. So the Gemara said, okay, so that's a different story. That's basically a regel. It's like trampling. It's not shen. It's not that the animal ate. So they said, "Afal achla afilu ma shenet ena meshalemet." You mean to say if the animal ate, so you mean to say that the animal does not pay the expense? So obviously, if it's beyond the person's control, it's honest, is one thing. But if they ate, leima Rav de Tamid, Amar Rav, haya la shelo tochal. Rav said that the animal should not have eaten it. So what does that mean? So Rashi said, since the animal fell there, be'ones, is beyond the control, the owner couldn't guard the animal not to eat. Meaning, it was beyond the person's control. So therefore, he or she is not obligated to pay for the hana'ah, for the benefit that animal had over eating there. Okay? Now the question is, the Shita Mekubez said, how far you ask the owner to guard his animal? How far you go? The scenario here is beyond the person's control. That he could not control it. And let's face it, those who live in the raw building, residential building, joint properties, etc., it's a development. It happens a lot that one animal jump to a place to someone else, and soon you see the halachic applications that go further, more than just animal damage someone else. Because here is the two different issues. One is shen and one is regel. Shen meaning the animal ate and you have the benefit of feeding the animal, and is a regel, trampling, that the animal just by jumping on that process saved their life. Amrei hache ashta. How you compare? Eimud amaravatam hayala shelo tochal echadi tazkai. That the animal damage It's a result of that eating that produce. The Mציעא אמר למראה דפרי, the owner of the produce can say to the owner of the animal, לא משלם נא. I'm not paying for the damage that you animal had toward my produce. היה לה שלא תאכל. The animal should not eat. לעזוקה היא אחריני. But the fact that it's damage to others by eating it, דפתירה לשלומי, that the owner exempt from payment, מי אמר? You regularly said that the owner can exempt himself from paying the owner of the produce by stating this claim. אלא, so you have to go by different understanding. 58, לא מבעיה כאמר. So, Rav meant that not only, but even, לא מבעיה אכלה דמשלמת מה שנהנית. That even Rashi said the owner did not did any form of negligence by not watching the animal. They have to pay regardless, whatever the animal's benefits. אבל נחבטה, but if the animal struck, meaning the animal struck by what? By the produce and was saved from the injury, so he needs to pay the other guy. אימה מבריח הרי מנכסי חברו, who, which means, you remember we talk about the lion chasing away a lion from his fellows. So, chasing lion from his fellow, so it's called meniat hahezek. You're avoiding damage from someone. You see a dangerous snake coming to someone's property. You do something that the snake run away. Okay? So it's different. ומה שנהנית נמי לא משלם. And also, what the animals ate, he doesn't need to pay kamash melan. So therefore, Rav wants to tell us that he is liable to pay this amount. So the Gemara said, ve'ima achinami, that even you said that by the animals fell on that produce, those produce was softened, and therefore the owner of the animal exempt even from paying the benefit from that, because you cannot demand payment if you cause the lion to run away from someone. You see a lion coming in, I say snake, but it just can be any dangerous that you're avoiding from someone. You cannot ask for payment for that, right? Imagine you go around the building and you see a dangerous snake coming in, and you specialize in snakes, so you get the snakes out, right? Now, can you demand payment for that? The answer is no. You're avoiding damage from someone else. That's not a cause to impose payment upon someone. You have to differentiate between the consent of a person or not. Because the produce saved the animal of his fellow. You have to differentiate between damage that caused from saving an animal or not damage caused for saving animals. So that's what I told you. It's a bulletin I saw in Muncie, New York. It was a bulletin that was a very serious discussion. When it was a true story. Fellow saw his neighbor a balcony, in a very dangerous situation. People walk under that balcony, and he was afraid in a second something happened to people. Now, the neighbor is away. So now the question is, all right, he hired contractors, he communicated with several, he gets best price, $4,000, usually it's $5,000-$6,000. He gets his friend, he's a professional, he did a great job. The guy come back, right? He wants his neighbor to pay him $4,000. His neighbors find out, he's happy with the job, he's thankful to that guy, he's very satisfied with the job. But he said, I know the truth, you pay $1,000. He says, it's none of your business how much I paid. This job, if you bring appraisal to anyone, is worth at least $4,000. So what I pay the other guy is none of your business. I want $4,000. The other guy said, no, I know the truth, how much you pay, and that's what I'm willing to pay you. So the big argument here is, if you tell me that it was a life in dangers, so you cannot ask for more money. The 1,000 is the 1,000, and that's the only money you can ask.
Rabbi,
However,
if
yeah.
it did cost 4,000, would he have to pay the 4,000?
The point is not how much it cost.
I understand,
The point
but
is, if it was life in dangerous,
he had to do it.
so you have to do it, so you have to pay exactly how much it cost,
Right.
versus it's called yored lisdeh חברו. You go to your neighbor, you see something, and you ameliorate, you fix something in your neighbor that make it in a better condition. Now the value of that property is way more, all right? If this guy will sell his house the way it was, the way it's now, is worth at least $4,000. So therefore he has the right to claim for 4,000, and how much he pay in real is not necessarily the other guy's business. Because if you bring an appraisal, and he said the value of this work is $4,000, and you bring the appraisal how much the property worth, and he says it's another $10,000 or $20,000, what he paid the other guy is none of his business. So the big question is, if it was life in danger, sakanat nefashot, then you cannot ask more than it's cost you. Right? Okay. Now we learn in the Mishnah, the owner of the animal that fell into that garden, so he doesn't need to pay for the damage. Why? Because it was all honest. It was all beyond the person's control. So now we have to define clearly what's considering honest. Honest meaning something that the owner couldn't do anything. Remember yesterday we talked about the robber that come with a gun and pull a gun and says you're dead if you don't give me the money, or things like that, right? So how far you go with honest? Hey nafal. Let's talk about the circumstantial evidence that the animal fell. For example, you have a public domain, you have a private domain. The animal walk in a public domain. Imagine you're walking with your dog, right, or whatever it is, in a public domain, all right? But that public domain was higher than the garden. So now it's not honest, it's negligent, it's pshia. Why? Because you shall not take your dog close to the garden of private person, because that, according to all the Rambam and other rabbis, Torat Chaim, they say that basically led the animal to fall there, right? So that's your responsibility. So they said, Rav Kahan amar shehuchleka b'memei raglea. Guess what? I'm sorry, please forgive me, but you go with your dog. The dog sometimes needs to release himself. Many times the dog, I see many of you are dog owners, right? So the dog, urinate sometimes to put a mark, to put a sign, whatever it is for other dogs. I'm right or wrong? I'm not owning dogs, but I think that's what happened, right? So what happened, when that animal walk in a public domain close to that garden that belongs to a private person, the animal urinate. For example, dog, right? And while the animal urinate, and let's face it, many times when the animal does that, the owner is not together with the animal, right? They run away close to a tree or run away a different location, and they do that, right? That now the animal go to a location that is between the garden that belongs to a private person and the public domain, right? Park or whatever it is, right? Now while the animal urinate, the animal just slip on their own water, and as a result the animal fell to the garden that belongs to a private person. That's, Rashi said, it's not common, right? So you can claim that the owner did not figure out that will happen. So that's called behind the person's control. He didn't figure out that may happen to his animal. So the Rambam said, he says it's not necessarily to say that it happened while the animal urinate. It can happen any form of the animal sleep on something. You have a little water there. You have other reasons, not necessarily because the animal itself did it. That's the Rambam. But anyway, that's the view of Rav Kahana. Rava amar shedchavta chaverta. It was another animal. You know, sometimes, for example, dogs, they meet each other, they start barking, they get around each other, right? So it happens that other animal push that animal from the public domain, from the park, to the private garden. Now the Gemara elaborates on that. Manda amar shedchavta chaverta. The one who said that another animal pushed it, So that's considering honest, right? Beyond control. כל שכן שהוחלקה במי רגליה. Obviously, that one said that he slipped on its own urine, consider only the circumstance to be unavoidable. ומאן דאמר שהוחלקה במי רגליה, that someone who said that the story is that the animal slipped on its urine, אבל דחפתה חברתה, but when is another animal pushed, its owner has acted negligently, and he must pay for what is damaged. So what is exactly negligence? דאמר לי, אבל דחפתה חברתה פשעה משלמת מה שהזיקת, אמר לי, היא באה אליך עבורי חדה חדה. He said you should pass the animal one by one, because the Rambam said usually the animals pushing each other. So you have to figure it out that because they're pushing each other, guess what? One of them may fall to that garden that is a private domain, and therefore you should pass your animal one by one, because you're not so cautious, you're not so careful. According to Rav Kahana, that's considering a negligence. More on that is Gemarrah in Bava Meciah 93. But anyway, Amar Rav Kahana. So again, we are now in a situation which you see soon a lot of derivatives, is a situation that animal was in a public domain, fell to a private domain, to a garden, without, be honest, without the control of the owner, and while there, the animal ate. So the owner needs to pay only for what the animal ate, but not what the animal damaged. So now the Gemara explained the limitation of that case. It said, אמר רב כהנא לא שנו אלא באותה ערוגה, אבל מערוגה לערוגה משלם את מה שהזיקה. You have to differentiate between animal that ate just from one place, meaning the one bed, one segment of the garden. But if it's from one to another, then it's a different story. The Rosh explained, you have to examine truthfully how far the owner can control the animal. And if the animal go further to another location, ate, that's a different story. The owner has to pay for that, because you cannot claim that it's beyond his control. And you see a lot of the halachic derivative from that. You have certain areas, unfortunately, that it's not a war zone, but it's an area that have a reputation that is a lot of thieves, a lot of crimes. You agree? Mm-hmm. So now what happened is, they hire a security company, the local people. Now, they ask all the people in the development, or all the people in the neighborhood, to pay them. So one neighbor said, no, you have a police. You guys decided to hire security, you board or you development people decided to hire this company to do this. That's the same as Mavriach Hari, you cause the lion, the snake to run away, right? Why should I pay for that? So the idea is, if the leaders of that neighborhood make rulings, they pass the resolution, right? They made the decision that they want to hire another security company to take care of that, so you have to pay, like everyone else. This is the Remah, the Shvut Yaakov, Khatam Sofer, Ateret Tzvi, and others. They speak about that sense in the case of fire. Remember we talked about the fire? You see a guy, Reuven, call him. He lived at the top floor. Fire took place. It's a big question how the fire took place, but it's clear that it wasn't from him. It's from outside circumstances. Can be a lot of causes, okay? And the fire took place on his floor. And as a result, he fixed the floor or he fixed the roof. If he did not fix it, the whole building will be burned, right? The question is, can he impose full or partially payment upon every neighbor of that building or not, right? That's based on this Gemara. Because what we said here when the animal fell there beyond the person's control is one thing. But when the animals went from one location to another and ate, so now you need to examine, as the Rosh tells us, how far the owner hold responsibility. One you say that is beyond his control, and one you say that is negligence. ורבי יוחנן אמר, אפילו מהרוגה להרוגה. Rabbi Yochanan said, even it's go from one bed to another, ואפילו כל היום כולו, the owner doesn't need to pay. The Meiri said, sometimes you have a mean people, and he was afraid to go there and start argue with that person. So he was waiting, he was like whispering to his animal, and he tried to get his animal back out, because he didn't want to deal with that people, right? So עד שתצא ותחזור, until the animal come back, ותחזור לדעת. Right? So then he paid the damage. But אמר רב פאפא, לא תימא עד שתצא לדעת ותחזור לדעת, אלא כיוון שיצאה לדעת, אף שחזרה שלא לדעת. Which means, you have to count. The big argument is how far you counted. When the animal reached there, when the animal comes back, my tama, he watched over properly. The Amarla, the owner of the garden, said to the owner of the animal, Kevan de yalfa, because the animal understands that there is a food in my domain, kol eimat de mishtamta lehatam ra'ata. So he said, since the animal has now learned that the garden is there with food to eat, so every time it's traded with one to go to that location. So therefore you have to watch, extraordinary, special watch, in order to avoid the animal from doing that. That's basically what we discussed earlier in the case of the האחרות. When you have these yeshiva boys, you remember we talked about them? Mm-hmm. They rent this apartment, and they saw that the window is broken, and they saw the door cannot be locked properly, but they rent the place. So if a thieves came in and stole things, they cannot withhold payment of rent because of that, right? Because you lease it, you're responsible for the lease. This is a common argument, landlord-tenant issues. How far you impose upon the landlord or you withhold payment of rent if the landlord did not take care of certain things. Especially in this case that the tenant claim of loss because the window was not locked properly, the door is not locked properly. So they said, ירדה כדרכה והזיקה, משלמת מה שהזיקה. If the animal went in a regular manner, meaning it wasn't in a special way, just a regular way, so he needs to pay whatever damage, not only what the animal ate, because here is a typical case of what? Of negligence. By Rabbi Yirmiyah. Rabbi Yirmiyah asked a question, ירדה כדרכה והזיקה במי לידה. If it was a birth water, and which means, Meiri explained that the animal went to the garden, and by the water that come out of the delivery, it's a damage the produce of the neighbor. Okay? So the question is, מהו? אליבא דמאן דאמר תחילתו בפשיעה בסופו באונס חייב. If you go according to a view that if the beginning was negligence, the end was beyond person's control. אליבא דמאן דאמר תחילתו בפשיעה בסופו באונס חייב, לא תיבא אלך. תוספות elaborate, but in short, look, the beginning was negligence. The end was beyond person's control. Since it was originally negligence, so it's the owner responsibility. כי תיבא אלך בליבא דמאן דאמר תחילתו בפשיעה בסופו באונס פטור, the one who said that if the beginning was negligence, but the end was the beyond person's control, exempt from payment, מי אמרינן כיוון תחילתו בפשיעה בסופו באונס פטור? או דילמה, you may said, הכה כולה בפשיעה. Everything was a negligent. כיוון דככה זה דקרובה ללמילד, היא בעלה נטורה. Guess what? You are owner of that animal. You know that this animal is about to deliver a new baby. And therefore, it's your responsibility to do what? To watch your animal. You didn't watch your animal, it's all negligence. 58b, ולאיסתמורי בגבה, and you should basically taking care of, and he bears responsibility for failing to do it. Even you argue and you say that delivering a baby, the Meiri said, it's very uncommon. And since it's uncommon, the owner must probably know that it happens, so he should figure that out. So it means that there's a serious possibility that there's a negligence here. So so left it unsolved. Based on that, you see how is derivative the halacha. There is a Shitat Rabbeinu Simcha, was a great sage in the past generation. He wrote based on that, if you have a married woman that secluded herself with a man, but later on it was a rape, right? So it means she was alone with the man, but later on rape took place. So even you can say Tchilato bepshi'a v'sofo beratzon, the beginning was the same case, you can compare and you said it's a negligence. By the end, it happens in different ways. So asura leba'ala, based on this, right? Based on that the same mindset. You watch over you animal when the animal is about to deliver a baby, and you know that it's a possibility that things like that happen, and therefore you have to watch more than the usual. כיצד משלם את מה שהזיקה? How does the owner pay for what it damaged? Now we talk about appraisal and evaluations, etc. What's the source? Amar Rav Matna d'Amar Kra, we derive from book of Shmot, chapter 22, verse 4, וביער בשדה אחר, and it consumes in the field of another. So the Torah said, מלמד, we derive from that text, מלמד ששמין על גב שדה אחר. That we evaluate the damage in the context of another large field. Because the superfluous word of acher, meaning you cannot appraise independently, you appraise as part of the others. So it's all together. Soon you see the application of many other avenues from that. Which means that the damage that made by shen and regel, eating or trampling, had occurred in the public domain. אם כן, the Gemara said, לכתוב רחמנא הוא ביער בשדה חברו. So the Torah should say, he did it what? In the ביער, and he did it in the somebody else's field, instead of בשדה אחר. הינם שדה אחר, נבט, מהי בשדה אחר, ששמין על גב שדה אחר. That basically when you evaluate the damage in the context of another large field. So they said, ואימה כולי להכהו דעתה, may say that the entire pasuk comes only to teach that lesson, which means you go by the way that you appraise the damage in relation to another field. להפוקי רשות הרבים. So how do you know when it's come to shel and regel in a public domain? אם כן לכתבי רחמנא גבי תשלומין. The Torah needs to speak about what the context of payment. So they said, מיטב שדה ומיטב כרמו ישלם בשדה אחר. The pasuk should be written in different. That his best quality field and the best quality of his vineyard, he shall pay in another field. So the other field is direct concerning how the damage is appraised when you talk about payment. למה לידיקת ורחמנא אגבי וביער? So why we say that it's because first of all, the שמאמינא תרתי, which means not only damages you go by comparative, by appraisal of another one, but also the obligation that you impose upon a person for damage of trampling and eating, shen and regel, in the public domain. So, the Lechem Mishneh asked a question in the Rambam. A thief. So obviously the thief needs to return the money, right? Or return whatever he stole. But in addition, the halakha requires him to ask mechila. to ask forgiveness. Versus mazik, when you have someone who caused damage, he doesn't need to ask for forgiveness by halacha. Why is that? Why the Rambam said that the thief needs to ask mechila and not a mazik? So the Maggid Mishnah explains beautifully. Said when someone stole something and he derived benefit of that, ne'ena, right? So therefore, he needs, in addition to return that stolen item, he needs to ask for forgiveness. Versus someone who damaged someone else, the one who caused damage did not derive any benefit, any joy from causing damage. So he needs to pay whatever he caused the damage, but he doesn't ask for forgiveness for causing the damage, if it was unintentional. And that's the core difference between ganav and mazik. Anyway, how exactly you evaluate the beit se'ah itself? Amar Rabbi Yosei bar Chanina, se'ah be-60 se'in. So he said that you go by the relation to an area required to sowing 60 se'ah of seed, and according to the calculation determines the value of the damage. So 160. Rabbi Yanai omer tarkav be-60 tarkabim. So again, tarkav is a measure of a half se'ah, which means 3 kav. It's from Greek. So they said evaluate to have a se'ah relative to an area of 60 tarkav. Chizki amar kelach be-6 klachim. So each stalk eaten relative to 60 stalk. Meitivei. Achla kav, if the animal ate kav or kabaim, which is the produce attached to the ground, you don't say to the owner, pay a compensation how those detached produce sell in the market. So you look as it's a small plot and you evaluate. My love, bifnei atzma. So what do you mean that we evaluate the damage plot by itself? It means by itself, right? So he said, lo be-60. You take the evaluation proportion to 1 to 60. So based on that, here is the question. You see practical halachot. Reuven hits an old car of Shimon. Remember that case? Now, Reuven has a car that's worth $5,000. Shimon cars is old, 20 years old, is $400 value. Old Buick, 1989, whatever, right? Now, he damages door. He damages a backlight, right? So the great Rabbi Za'afrani is a great posek in Israel, and others. The damage, the mazik, said to the injured party, Nizak, look, this is old car. So guess what? If you take this old car, you can sell it for $500. What's the difference if this door looks like that, or this door looked the way before the damage? Maybe $20, $10? So that's what I'm going to pay you, right? The truth is, it's wrong. Why? Because Shimon said, look, it is true that I can walk in and use the side door to get to the driver's seats. But this door is not opening and is not safe and is not good the way it is. So even people with no money, still they need to fix the door, or still need to fix the side light. Otherwise it's dangerous. So that's uncomparable to what we said in the past, the psak of the Chafetz Chaim, the Chazon Ish, Reb Chaim of Brisk. You remember we talked about broken window. So someone tried to say that, look, you look at the building, how much the building worth, or the property worth, with the window broker, without the window broker. How much you sell it, and if the window makes a difference. And if it doesn't make a difference in sales, So that's what you need to pay, the difference. Versus here, no. You have to buy a new door or a new light that people do it for safe or convenience and other things. So even it turns that the door cost more than the entire car, according to what the way of Zafrani proof from our Sugya, you need to pay that. תנו רבנן, אין שמין קו מפני שמשביחו, ולא בית קור מפני שפוגמו. The rabbi said, we do not evaluate a calf because it's profit him, and not beit kor because it depletes him. מה כאמר? אמר רב פאפא הכי כאמר. אין שמים קו ב-60 קבים מפני שמשביח מזיק. The damage profit from that. ולא קור ב-60 קבים מפני שפוגם מזיק. The damage lost because מתקיף לרב הונא בר מנוח, היי ולא בית קור ולא קור מבא אלי. אלא אמר רב הונא בר מנוח משמן דרבא חברי דרביקה, הכי כאמר. This is what הכי כתני. אין שמין קו בפני עצמו. We not appraise a calf by itself, מפני שמשביח ניזק, because that will enhance the position of the injured party. ולא calf בבית קור, not the rabbinic court appraise calf in a part of בית קור, מפני שפוגם ניזק אלא ב-60, because you weaken the position of the injured party since damage inside such a large area is insignificant. So rather, the rabbinic court appraises damage in relation to an area 60 times greater than the area that was damaged. So Reb Welvel of Brisk, Reb Cheskel Avramsky, they ask if someone has, for example, trees, owns the trees without owning the estate, meaning just the trees he owns. Can you evaluate the trees independently or not? It's a discussion. And I would like to conclude with the Ra'avad, the great Raavad. He asked a question, how the rabbis came up with the idea of 160. So he said, if you look at the Isur Veheter, the idea of Batel Beshishim meaning, that's the way that the Pri Megadim tells us, that you have a pot of meat, that part of the carcass, nevela, fall in that. So you have to evaluate 1 of 60. If it's 1 of 60 for that nevela, so it's abrogated, it's mitbatel. So who has the benefit? The question is, the owner of the meat or the other owner? So the same applies in se'ah. You go by the same comparative measurement, which is 1 of 60, the same as you go in Isu Veheter, you go here. That's the Raavad.
Shula